The stars were silent when the first warning was sent across the void. A message carried on every human frequency, a voice clear and sharp. Do not cross into soul space. Do not test the will of humanity for centuries. Earth had dreamed of peace. They had dreamed of joining the greater galaxy, but dreams had turned to ashes when the NIGMA Empire came. They did not come with open hands. They came with warships, their banners black and gold, their voices filled with pride. They had ruled thousands of systems for ages, and when they looked at Earth, they saw nothing but a weak young race ready to be crushed. Their fleets swept into the outer colonies without hesitation, burning cities, tearing families apart, leaving only fire and silence behind. Every broadcast carried their cruelty across human screens. Children watching as their homes were turned to ash. Parents watching as their families begged for mercy that never came. The first warning was ignored, and the second was mocked. The NIGMA. Commanders laughed, speaking to their soldiers as if humanity were insects. They said no race had ever stood against them. They said no world had survived their empire. They said Earth would kneel just as countless others had done before, but they did not understand humanity. Admiral Sarah Vaylor stood on the observation deck of a hidden station in the asteroid belt, her eyes fixed on the shadows of unfinished warships drifting around her, her face calm but her heart burning with fury. She had seen the reports, she had seen the ruins of colonies where millions had lived. She had heard the cries of survivors whispering that the NIGMA could never be stopped, and yet she refused to believe it. She knew what humanity was when pushed to, the edge she had read. The history books of wars fought on Earth, wars that had torn continents apart, wars where humans had refused to surrender even when surrounded, even when broken humanity had always been dangerous, when ignored, when cornered. They became something the galaxy had never faced before, and now that moment had returned. The NIGMA Empire had ignored the warning they had crossed into Sol, they had spilled human blood, and now vengeance was stirring deep in the black across the solar system. Factories thundered day and night, hidden under oceans and buried beneath moons. Entire armies of workers building something no alien believed humanity could make fleets of warships forged, not for beauty or ceremony, but for war there. Hulls black, their cannons glowing with raw power, every bolt hammered with rage, every engine fueled by survival. Sarah walked among the construction yards, silent, as she watched engineers work with bleeding hands, pilots training until they collapsed. Soldiers swearing oaths that they would not rest until the NIGMA were broken. She could feel it in the air, a storm rising not of fear, but of unity. For the first time in history, Earth and Mars and the colonies spoke with one voice, the Terran Authority. Born not of politics, but of survival, not of speeches, but of fury. The Council on Earth had given up hope, believing submission was the only answer. But the people whispered otherwise. They whispered of the dreadnought, rising in secret, the ship called Iron Resolve, the weapon that would change everything. The NIGMA laughed when they heard rumors they believed humanity too primitive, too fragile, too divided. They thought the warning had been nothing more than desperate words from a dying race. But Sarah knew the truth. The warning had been the first stone, and the next would be fire. She stood at the edge of the command deck, her eyes locked on the massive warship as its engines roared to life, the light blazing across the dark. And in that moment, she whispered words. Only her crew could hear. They ignored our warning. Now they will hear our answer. The engines of Iron Resolve thundered as the dreadnought rose from its hidden cradle inside the asteroid belt, its black hull swallowing. The light around it, its weapons lined like teeth of a predator. Admiral Sarah Vaylor stood at the command deck, her face lit by the glow of consoles, her voice steady but filled with fire. The NIGMA Empire thinks we are weak, but today they will learn what humanity has built in silence. The crew stood ready, their eyes wide with fear and pride, for none had ever seen such a ship before. None had believed it was possible that humans could craft something larger, faster, and deadlier than the fleets of the galaxy, but here it was real and alive. The warning humanity had sent was not a bluff, it was a promise. And now that promise was about to be delivered across the system. Signals spread of the launch. Children on Mars pressed their faces to the glass of domes, watching as the warship passed overhead. Its shadow, blotting out the sun workers on Europa, stopped their drills, and cheered soldiers on Earth, saluted as images of the dreadnought filled every screen for the first time since the invasion. Humanity felt not despair, but pride. The NIGMA Empire had burned their homes, but humanity had forged something stronger out of the fire, while humans celebrated the NIGMA. Empire continued their advance. Fleets of silver and gold swept through the outer colonies, their captains boasting that Earth would fall within weeks. They had ignored the first warning, they laughed at the second, and when they intercepted broadcasts of iron resolve, they dismissed it as propaganda, a trick to give hope to a broken people. So they sent a fleet of 50 ships to Sol's space, expecting surrender, expecting fear, expecting humanity to kneel. Admiral Sarah knew they were coming. Her spies had intercepted the movements. Her scouts had seen the armada forming, and she did not wait. She prepared her crew. She walked among them before battle, her voice calm yet sharp like steel. She told them, "You are not fighting for a flag or a world. You are fighting for every voice that cried in the dark when the NIGMA burned their homes. You are fighting for every child that never saw tomorrow, and you are fighting to show the galaxy that humanity bows to no one." The words sank into their hearts, and when the alarms rang and the NIGMA fleet entered human space, there was no hesitation on the deck of Iron Resolve. The crew stood, tall eyes fixed on Admiral Sarah, waiting for the command. The alien ships glittered like stars, 50 of them moving in perfect formation, each one bristling with weapons, their signals filled with mockery, their commander demanding surrender, promising that those who resisted would suffer slow deaths. But Sarah only smiled, her scarred hand tightening on the command rail. She spoke not to the enemy, but to her own fleet fire. Her words ignited the void. Iron Resolve unleashed its fury. Cannons screamed across space, missiles streaked like firestorms, plasma lances tore into the alien fleet. The first NIGMA cruiser shattered, its golden hull split apart in a burning storm. The others hesitated, their captains shocked that a primitive ship could deliver such devastation. The hesitation was enough. Human warships, smaller but faster, swarmed from hidden stations, flanking the NIGMA lines, tearing at their weak points, moving. With fury and precision, the battle had begun, and humanity was not begging for survival. They were striking for vengeance. The galaxy had ignored the warning. Now it would watch the answer, and as Iron Resolve cut through the heart of the enemy fleet, Sarah's voice echoed across every channel. Let this be remembered: humanity does not kneel, humanity strikes back. The wreckage of golden ships drifted across the black as firestorms burned in the silence of space. The first clash between humanity and the NIGMA Empire had ended, not with surrender, but with shock, for the galaxy had expected Earth to break yet. The dreadnought Iron Resolve stood untouched, its cannons glowing, its crew alive with fury. Admiral Sarah Vaylor watched the enemy retreat, her eyes sharp as steel, her hand steady on the command rail. She had given the order to fire, and humanity had answered with a storm that the Empire had never faced before. And for the first time in history, the NIGMA Empire retreated in disgrace across every colony from Mars to Titan. People filled the streets shouting, crying, and cheering. The images of the battle played again and again. The sight of golden ships torn open by human fire, the sound of Sarah's voice declaring, "Humanity does not kneel." Every child memorized the words. Every soldier swore the same oath. The Terran authority was no longer a dream, it was alive, and every citizen felt it in their blood. But Sarah was not celebrating. She stood in the war room of Iron Resolve with her officers as they examined the spoils of war, for among the wreckage the humans had captured a NIGMA command ship, its crew dead, but its systems intact inside its databanks. They uncovered something the Empire had never wanted revealed. Star maps, codes, lists of supply routes and weaknesses that stretched deep into NIGMA space. The officers stared in silence, their faces pale with disbelief. The Empire was vast, but its control was brittle. It ruled by fear and chains, not loyalty. Many of its outposts were weak, isolated worlds, garrisoned only by small fleets ripe for rebellion or conquest. Sarah studied the maps, her jaw tightening. This is their pride, this is their arrogance, and now it will be their downfall. Her words were cold, but her crew felt the fire inside them. The NIGMA thought humanity would break, but instead, humanity had found the cracks in the Empire, and with every battle those cracks would grow larger. The decision was made. Humanity would no longer wait for the Empire to strike again. They would not simply defend Sol, they would carry the war into enemy space. The Terran Authority prepared with ruthless speed. Shipyards burned with light day and night as new warships were born. Faster, deadlier, larger than before, every hand worked without rest. Engineers, miners, and civilians giving everything for the fleet. The news of victory spread beyond human borders, and with it whispers began among other alien races who had lived under NIGMA chains for generations. They watched the humans rise from nothing and strike the Empire with fire, and they whispered perhaps the humans would succeed. Perhaps the Empire was not eternal. Sarah knew the galaxy was watching, and she wanted them to see. She wanted them to know that when humanity was rejected, when humanity was ignored, it did not vanish. It did not bow. It rose, stronger than ever. The crew of Iron Resolve trained endlessly for the next assault. They knew the Empire would return with greater force, but they also knew that fear was already spreading in NIGMA halls. Commanders questioning how a young race could fight so fiercely, rulers whispering if the humans were not like the others. They had crushed and enslaved before Sarah stood before her officers once more. Her hand resting on the glowing map of the galaxy, her voice steady as she declared, "We will not wait for their chains to reach us again. We will take this war into their heart. We will strike their worlds. We will show the galaxy that those who mock humanity, those who ignore our warning, will burn." Her words were carried across the authority. Every screen, every speaker, echoing the promise of vengeance. And as the Iron Resolve turned toward NIGMA space engines burning brighter than suns, the crew stood ready for what was to come. The first battle had been a warning, the next would be conquest. The Iron Resolve cut through the void like a blade, its engines roaring as the Terran fleet followed in formation, black ships against the stars, brutal in design, forged not for beauty, but for war. Admiral Sarah Vaylor stood at the heart of the command deck, her eyes fixed on the holographic map that glowed with countless red points, each one a world claimed by the NIGMA Empire, each one a symbol of chains and fire. Humanity had captured their first enemy maps, and now those maps were guides to vengeance. The first targets were supply stations, isolated colonies far from the Empire's core. The perfect places to strike. The fleet descended without mercy. Missiles tore through golden towers, plasma burned through fortresses. The NIGMA garrisons fought, but they were not prepared for the fury of humans who had been denied mercy. Every world they struck fell quickly, and the broadcasts carried across the stars, images of Terran banners rising above alien cities, voices shouting, "Humanity does not kneel. Humanity strikes back the galaxy." Trembled other alien races who had lived for centuries under the Empire's heel began to whisper. Perhaps the humans were not mad. Perhaps they were hope itself. Rebellion sparked. On hidden worlds, slaves rising with stolen weapons. When they saw Terran fleets burn, NIGMA ships, entire systems began to question the Empire's strength. The golden throne of the NIGMA was no longer untouchable. Admiral Sarah knew this and pressed. Harder each battle, more daring each strike deeper into enemy space. Her officers worried they could not hold such a campaign, that humanity was still too small, but she silenced them with one truth. Fear is already on our side. We do not need to match their numbers. We need only to remind them that they can bleed and bleed. They did world after world burning under Terran fire. The NIGMA empire that had once laughed at Sul now scrambled to defend itself. Its commanders confused its soldiers, afraid. Never before had such resistance been faced from a race so young. The empire had believed humans too primitive, too divided, too fragile, but division had turned to unity, fragility had turned to steel, and now humanity was a storm sweeping through. Their skies, yet victories, carried whispers of shadows, for among the captured databanks from one of the burning colonies, the Terran fleet discovered something strange, files hidden deep, locked with codes older than the Empire itself. Sarah stood in the war room as the files opened, the screen filled with symbols not of NIGMA origin, but something more ancient. The message was clear. The NIGMA were building a weapon, not to destroy humanity, but to defend themselves against another enemy, an enemy that had not been seen for ages. Her officers argued, some saying it was a trick, others saying it was fear. But Sarah listened closely to the captured NIGMA general, who spat his words with blood still on his lips. "You are fools. You think this. War is only between you and us. You think your fire is the end, but there are shadows beyond the stars, shadows older than the Empire, older than your kind. This weapon was not for you, it was for them. And when they come, you will beg for our chains. You will beg for our protection." The chamber went silent. Even the most hardened soldiers felt the cold in their bones, for if the NIGMA who had ruled for ages feared something, then that something was greater than anything the galaxy had known. Sarah said nothing at first, her eyes locked on the flickering symbols. She felt the weight of the warning, and yet her voice was steady when she finally spoke. If the galaxy believes humanity will beg, then they have learned nothing. We do not beg, we fight. And if there are shadows waiting, then we will meet them in fire. Her crew answered with shouts of pride, but in their eyes she saw fear. She knew what they did not say. If the warning was true, the real war had not even begun. And as the Terran banners rose on another conquered world, the signals from deep space grew stronger, whispering of a storm older than empires, a storm now awakening. The ruins of the NIGMA outpost still burned as the Terran banners waved above its shattered citadel. The human fleet had struck hard, leaving no doubt that the Empire's golden grip was breaking. Admiral Sarah Valor stood within the command chamber, of iron resolve, staring at the decoded symbols glowing across the walls. They were not of human design nor NIGMA. They belonged to something far older, something that seemed to hum with a voice of its own. Her officers debated the meaning. Some argued that the NIGMA had faked the data to sow fear. Others whispered of ancient myths passed through alien slaves, stories of a darkness that had once swept the stars. Sarah listened to, all but trusted none she knew. Only this: the Empire had been preparing for something, and humanity had walked blindly into the middle of it. The galaxy thought them reckless, and perhaps they were. But Sarah also knew one truth. Humanity had never feared the dark. They had lived in it, fought in it, and turned it into fire. Now, however, she felt the weight of time pressing against her, as if the stars themselves held their breath. The warning of the captured general rang in her mind. Shadows beyond the stars. Shadows older than empires, and yet she could not pause for. The NIGMA Empire was not retreating. It was gathering a counterstrike, the largest the humans had yet seen. Dozens of fleets rallied from the Empire's core, hundreds of ships moving with fury to crush the upstart Terran authority before it grew into something unstoppable. Sarah knew this battle would decide everything. If they fell here, humanity's dream of vengeance would die. If they stood, the galaxy itself would change forever. She summoned her commanders to the war table, and the plan was drawn. The Terran fleets would not scatter. They would gather into one unstoppable storm. Every warship, from Earth to the colonies, recalled every pilot, every marine, every weapon loaded to the brim. The shipyards emptied, entire planets stripped. Bare for the sake of this battle, civilians sent messages of fire and faith, promising that even if their worlds burned, humanity would rise again. The Empire did not wait. Their golden armada swept forward, filling the void like a tide, their ships flawless, their formations perfect, their commanders arrogant, for they still believed humans were animals playing at war. They had not yet learned that humans were at their most dangerous when cornered. Sarah stood before her crew before the thousands. Aboard Iron Resolve, her voice cutting through the silence like steel. We did not choose this war, but we will end it. We will not kneel. We will not vanish today. We fight not only for Earth, but for every world that dares to dream of freedom today. We show the galaxy what it means to be human. Her words lit fire in every heart across the fleet as the armada closed. The black of space blazed with light. Missiles, fire lances, plasma storms colliding like gods. At warships exploded into burning, wreckage the screams of dying crews echoing across comms. But humanity did not falter. Their formations were not perfect, their ships not flawless, but their spirit was iron. They fought with fury, with desperation, with the rage of a people denied mercy. And slowly, impossibly, the golden tide began to break. Iron Resolve led the charge, cutting through the Empire's center cannons, tearing apart cruisers, shields, holding as flames licked at its hull. The enemy pressed harder wave after wave. But the humans adapted, striking with chaos, unpredictability, breaking the perfect rhythm of the Empire until the rhythm collapsed. But even as victory neared, Sarah saw what her crew did not. Among the wreckage signals stirred the ancient symbols. Lighting again across their captured systems, pulsing brighter as if awakened by the bloodshed, she realized too late the truth. The NIGMA weapon was not a lie. It was a cage. And with every battle, every blast, it was breaking open, and something was answering from the dark beyond the stars, a voice older than empires, a presence rising as the golden fleet burned and the humans cheered. Sarah felt only silence. She knew the real war was about to begin. The wreckage of the NIGMA armada floated in. The endless dark human warships scarred and battered, but still burning with fire, their banners rising high. Admiral Sarah Vaylor stood on the bridge of Iron Resolve, staring at the silent aftermath. Thousands of lives lost. Yet humanity had not only survived, it had carved its name into the galaxy with blood. The Terran Authority was no longer a whispered rebellion. It was a power undeniable, a storm the Empire could not crush across the colonies. People celebrated, shouting, "Humanity does not," kneel voices echoing into the stars. But Sarah could not join their triumph, for deep in the data streams of captured systems, the symbols still pulsed, glowing like a heartbeat. She had thought them strange warnings, or perhaps ancient records. But now they pulsed in rhythm with the aftermath of war, as if the slaughter had been a signal. The memory of the NIGMA general's words clawed at her mind. Shadows beyond the stars, older than empires, older than your kind, when they come, you will beg. For our chains, Sarah felt the weight of that prophecy and knew it was no bluff. For even as the humans rebuilt, even as shipyards roared and armies marched, new signals swept through the void. They were not NIGMA transmissions, nor human their pattern. Was alien and ancient, something that resonated with the very bones of space exploration. Ships on the edge of Terran space vanished without a trace. Stations went silent. Entire colonies reported seeing black shapes moving through the stars then. Nothing. Sarah summoned her war council. Their faces grim as reports grew darker. Fleets disappearing. Worlds erased, no survivors, no wreckage, only silence spreading like disease. She spoke with calm steel. We thought the Empire was our enemy, but it was only a wall between us and something worse now. The wall is broken and we are exposed. The Council demanded answers. Some begged to retreat to fortify Earth. Others argued to crush the remaining NIGMA worlds before the Empire could rise again. But Sarah shook her head, her voice cold. The NIGMA are finished. They will never rise again. But if these shadows are what the Empire feared, then we must face them head-on. We cannot hide, because there will be nowhere to hide. Her decision was made. The Terran Authority would unite fully every world, every colony, every ship under one banner. No more division, no more waiting. The golden age of empire was over. Now it was humanity's time to forge not just survival, but dominance the NIGMA had, ruled by chains. But humanity would rule by fire as Terran fleets marched deeper into the void. Sarah prepared them not only for conquest, but for something greater, an unknown war. A threat that might erase them all yet. She believed with every breath that humanity would endure, for this was their way to take rejection, to take suffering, to take chains, and turn them into strength, to turn despair into fury, and fury into survival. And as the first long-range sensors caught the faint outlines of ships moving in the dark, ships larger than cities, older than memory, their forms unlike anything known, Sarah stood at the command rail, her crew, silent eyes wide with dread. She spoke not to comfort, but to steel them. Humanity was rejected by the galaxy. Humanity was ignored, mocked, hunted, and threatened, and yet we rose, we struck back, we conquered, and now we stand at the edge of something greater, something terrible. But remember this, we are human, we do not kneel, we do not beg, we do not vanish, we fight. And if the shadows come, then the shadows will burn. Her words echoed through the fleet, through every ship, every soldier, every civilian. And as the stars flickered with strange new lights, humanity's banners rose higher. The Terran Authority, now an empire not of chains but of fire. The war with NIGMA was over, but the real war, the war of survival, the war against the unknown, had only just begun.